Let's take a look at a new feature that's coming to Excel called Format Stale Values. The purpose of formatting stale values is to let you know where things have changed when you're not using the automatic calculation feature. This way you get a visual indication that you may be looking at inaccurate data. For example, I have an amortization table sample file. If I were to go in and change something like the loan amount, say to $250,000, then the entire amortization table changes, it updates. But if I were to go up to formulas, and then in the calculation options, change this from automatic to say manual, and I'll go back to loan amount and change this to say $200,000, my amortization table does not update, which means I'm now looking at stale information. Now, I would wager that most people use automatic updates as opposed to manual updates, but I've encountered numerous scenarios where users have been put into manual mode by accident, didn't realize it, and then they were looking at these answers thinking these are the correct answers when they're not, because the user needs to go up to the ribbon and choose Calculate Now to get those updated results. So if you're an Office 365 subscriber, what we can do is go up to Calculate Options and activate this feature called Format Stale Values. With Format Stale Values activated, here's what happens. Say I were to go to the interest rate and I were to change this to 4.75%. Now every cell that is reliant or dependent on that interest rate has a strike through. We can now readily recognize all dependent cells where information is now out of date. Now, of course, if we go up and click Calculate Now, we're now looking at the most recent information. If I were to change this from 30 years to 20 years, now we see all the dependent cells that are now inaccurate. Now let's explore some of the options and features. If I were to go to one of these cells that has a strike through, and I click the Information button, we see Excel is trying to tell us that we're looking at stale information. We can get help on this error, find out why it's stale. We can, of course, update it by clicking Calculate Now, which is the same thing as either hitting the F9 key or clicking the Calculate Now button in the ribbon. If we were placed into manual mode by accident and didn't mean to be here, we could go ahead and switch back to automatic mode. But if you don't want the strike-through feature, but you wish to remain in manual calculation mode, then you can disable the feature here. I'll go ahead and choose Calculate Now, and we get our update. Now, this feature is still in beta and will only be available to Office 365 subscribers. But having seen this, it sparked my imagination, and I want to show you where I hope Microsoft eventually takes this. Here's a feature that I wish they would implement, and it's a feature that they've used for years in a different program, Microsoft Project. So we've switched over to Microsoft Project. Now, if you've never used Microsoft Project before, that's fine, but the point will still be made. What we have here is a list of all sorts of tasks and durations and start and end times and resource assignments, but it looks very much like a spreadsheet, so let's just pretend this was Excel. Check out this feature in Project. Since I can't install the drywall until the insulation has been placed, and I can't paint the drywall until the drywall has been installed, there are dependencies with these steps. Events happen one after the other. But what if one of these events gets delayed? It should automatically push the schedule of the following events. So what Project does, if I were to go in here and say push this out by a day, notice how it automatically shades all of the dependent cells. So unlike the Format Stale Values, which shows you where things are old and need to be updated, it would be nice if Excel could just show you everything that was affected by something that had changed. So we could still use this for automatic calculations. So to simulate what I'm talking about, imagine coming in here and changing the interest rate to something like 5.25%, and then every dependent cell changes to a shade. So now you could take your time, scan through this document, and know exactly what was affected by that alteration. So this is just wishful thinking on my part. Maybe these shades only stay on the screen for a certain amount of time, or maybe we add a button to clear the shading. There are all sorts of ways we could develop this. But maybe we'll get lucky and somebody at Microsoft will see this video and we'll give them the idea. So that's the upcoming Format Stale Values feature. Let me know what you think about this. I think this feature is going to save a lot of people grief who are accidentally switched into manual mode and they don't realize it. Thanks for watching, and remember at BCTI, the learning never stops.